Irashaimase! Hello and welcome to Fataris' Kitchen. I'm your host, Chef Fataris. It's time once again for Shoot 'em Up Saturday, and on the menu this week we have Gunnail, an obscure early 90s arcade shooter. What kind of taste will it have? Let's get cooking and find out. From developer NMK, Gunnail released to arcades in 1993. Now, this is yet another one of NMK's obscure shoot-em-ups that I'm really grateful that Hamster has released in their Arcade Archive franchise. This is one that I probably would have never played otherwise. And, well, to be fair, some of the other NMK shooters haven't been my favorite, but this one I have actually enjoyed a fair bit. It's very basic, but it just kind of has an almost hypnotic quality to it that makes it enjoyable to play. So that said, let's dive into the game and, well, you can determine if it's something for you based off of what you see. So putting the credits into the machine, we're just taken to this relatively boring start screen. This title is 2-player, so we will be showing that off. One thing to keep in mind though, it does add a little bit of slowdown to the gameplay, so that's something to note. So, one thing I can say right off the bat, I really love the pixel backgrounds this game has. Throughout the entire game, I feel like it uses really wonderful backgrounds ranging from cityscapes to spacescapes to like relatively desolate planets, and that's one of the things that I enjoy about the title. Talking about the gameplay, we're getting to about as basic as you can truly be. So we've got two methods of attacking. We have our shot, which is fortunately there is the ability to set auto in the Arcade Archive emulator. Otherwise you would have to tap the button and it gives you a burst fire. In addition to that, we also have the bomb, which we'll be using against the first stage boss here, which does come up pretty quickly. So the bomb actually has a really beautiful, it's almost kind of like a mandala or like a placemat effect to it. As far as the way that it looks, I don't feel it's actually very effective in terms of the damage it deals out, but it is effective at clearing enemy shots. So it's the kind of thing that you would want to use to defend yourself against the enemy shots while you deal additional damage with your weapons. As far as the weapons are concerned, you start off with just the basic like pea shooter when you begin your playthrough, but once you pick up a power-up or one of the different weapon orbs, you're joined by two options on either side of the ship, and those options will have one of 3 different weapons associated with it. By default, you start with the wide, which is your spread, and you can power up all the way from level 1 all the way to level 10 just by picking up these P power-ups that we see floating around the stage. In addition to that, when you happen to game over, when you continue, there is an S power-up which will power you all the way to level 10 as well, something to keep in mind. We also have the red, which gives you this fire beam, and those fire beams do home in on the enemies. It's actually a great way to kind of handle crowd control, but it's not terribly powerful. The spread is also great for crowd control. And then the last of the 3 weapons is the purple. This one is the laser. So it's a straightforward laser which will deal a pretty decent damage right in front of you. So rather than utilize lights, one thing that's interesting and kind of on the unique side of Gunnail is the shield system that it has. So even though they're considered shields, you actually lose your weapon power and your options when you get hit. So it doesn't feel much like a shield. It definitely feels more like a life. But the game has what it is called the multiple shield system, the MSS. So what is advertised there is that the fewer shields you have, the higher your multiplier. So if we get down to no shields, then this boss will be worth even more points when it inevitably is defeated. So we get the ×3 multiplier, and that's from having no shields, basically no lives in reserve. So it's the scoring in this game is very much a risk-reward scenario. And that's definitely neat, but at the same time, it comes with its drawbacks. So one thing that Hamster did with this particular release is they oftentimes do add in some preferences you can use to kind of change or customize the gameplay itself. And one thing they did is gave you the option to disable a soundbite that plays when you are at 0 lives. It's basically, it's giving you a warning beep constantly until you get a game over. So if that was on right now, it'd be like beep, 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 beep. It gets really, really annoying and incessant very quickly. So like huge kudos to Hamster for including an option to disable that particular annoying klaxon, as it makes this game so much more enjoyable. Just one of those things. Anyway, real quick about the stage that we've been blazing through. So stages 3 and 6 kind of feel like bonus stages. We have a counter at the top of the stage, and then there's a special power-up that you only get in those 2 stages, the S power-up, which is the super acceleration. It gives you a burst of speed throughout the course of the stage, and in addition to that, it also doubles your points when you're in that high-speed scenario. So, the thing that's interesting about those stages is there's a counter at the top of them, and if you get through that boss at the end of the stage fast enough, you just need to survive the stage to the end of the counter. If you get through the stage fast enough, though, then you get a whole lot of point items and power-ups after you defeat the boss. Basically, those stages act as bonus stages, which is something that's not too uncommon in shoot-'em-ups, but it's definitely appreciated to see in this kind of a title. Especially from the era in the early 90s. One thing that I haven't talked about so far, but there is an advantage to playing with 2-player. If you happen to layer your 2 ships, both your, not necessarily the shots from your options, but the shots from the ships themselves will basically act as a full level 10 power shot, dealing additional damage to the enemies that would happen to be directly in front of you. Just a nice bonus when you're playing the game with a partner. So that's basically Gunnail served up for your enjoyment. So it definitely is one of those arcade shooters that will take your quarters if you let it, but I feel like there's also a lot of enjoyable gameplay here to be had. So with the 3 different weapons, I feel like they're enjoyable to use. I do quite like the fire beam, but the spread as well as the laser also have their place. I've already talked a little bit about the spatial bomb, which is what the bomb is actually called. How I just feel it's not particularly useful at dealing damage, but it really is great at covering for potential damage that you could take. Though there is that desire to potentially run the game at a lower life total just so you can get those big boss bonuses, which do increase over time as well. And in addition to, so if you're like run low life for a longer period of time, you'll actually get higher boss totals, and you get additional shields, which will increase that bonus as well at 500 and 2 million or 500,000 and 2 million points. So as far as the minus flavors I feel this game has, so it's less obvious with that sound soundbite turned off, but the game's sound design isn't good. And I feel that there's also kind of a difficulty spike around stages 4 and 5 where they're throwing just more bullets at you. And I don't necessarily appreciate that, but at the same time, you can kind of learn the stages and learn the enemies that you're facing and end up getting a little better at dealing with those particular patterns. One thing to note about Stage 5 here, there is definitely some more slowdown present in this stage than like others, and that's the case whether or not you're playing with like a one player or two player. These platforms act as basically sprites, and with those additional sprites on the screen, it just slows the game kind of to a crawl. But on the plus flavors, I do really enjoy specifically the sprite work that this particular title has. I think they did a wonderful job designing some beautiful ships, beautiful enemies. The bosses are really like neat and unique, and the backgrounds in particular I really enjoy. They're really kind of like what helped make this particular title for me. So it's one that I've enjoyed, if for nothing else, just being able to enjoy the art. And then in addition to the bosses and the enemies having unique patterns, I kind of think the boss fights themselves are kind of fun. Kind of just learning like the bosses, the fact that the bosses are like multi-segmented. So this boss here is actually a great example of that, where we're blasting off various parts of the boss until they're nothing. That's something about that that's just satisfying. So there you have it. Gunnail served up for your enjoyment. This is one that, as an arcade archive title, it's relatively straightforward, and it doesn't stand out in a whole lot of ways other than maybe like the visual category, as the gameplay itself is relatively straightforward and it's not notable, but at the same time, maybe that's what helps make it notable. But I've had a fun time with this one, so it would be one that I would recommend. Well, that just about wraps up for this week's episode of Shoot 'em Up Saturday. As always, I want to thank you so much for joining us. I hope you have a wonderful week, and we look forward to seeing you next time.